everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Molly and I just recently finished section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. Today I want to talk about 5 things that I liked about section hiking and 5 things that I didn't really like about section hiking. If section hiking or hiking the Oregon Coast Trail is something that you're interested in, at the end of this video I'm also going to include 2 tips that should help you out if this is something that you're wanting to do. So I'm going to start off with talking about the 5 things that I did like about section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. The first one is that I didn't have to quit my job. I was able to complete all of the sections of the Oregon Coast Trail primarily on the weekends. I would capitalize on 3-day weekends like Memorial Day, the 4th of July, Veterans Day, things like that, where I already had that day off. But all in all, I only took off 6 days this year to hike the Oregon Coast Trail, and 3 of those days were in the last section. So it's really doable if you live in the area to section hike the Oregon Coast Trail while still having a full-time job. The second thing that I liked about section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail was that I only had to carry a day pack. Because I was just section hiking and I was only out for a couple of days and we were staying in state park campgrounds, I didn't have to carry my backpacking backpack with all of my backpacking gear. I was able to just carry a day pack that probably didn't weigh any more than 10 pounds, and all of our camping gear I was able to either leave in the car or at the campground when I was hiking. And my pack was just primarily like the 10 essentials and some food and water for the day. The third thing that I liked about section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail was that it was a lot easier to plan around the tides. So the tides are a really big part of hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. There are a lot of parts where you need to plan to hike these sections when it's low tide. For example, Hug Point in the Cannon Beach area, if you try to hike that during high tide, you're not going to get past it and you're going to have to hike on the road or skip that section. So being able to pull up the tide schedule for the month that I was expecting to do that section made it really helpful to pick a weekend where the tides were cooperating. That made it a lot easier because I'm imagining if you're through hiking, you don't really have that luxury unless you want to wait around a lot. So being able to plan ahead and pick days where it would work out in my favor for the most part was really helpful. There were a few times where this just didn't work out. I would pick a weekend where tide was low for one part, and then the next day, I needed it to be low at a different time, and it just happened to be high tide. So it doesn't always work out, but I did my best to schedule the sections for weekends where I would be able to hike as much of the trail as possible. The fourth reason I liked section hiking the OCT is because I didn't have to give up like my whole summer. I didn't have to set aside the whole month or so dedicated just to hiking. So I was able to do a lot of other fun activities this summer. I went on some other camping trips, some other day hikes. My husband and I hiked a lot of the Timberline Trail. And we're just able to do other things, still hang out with friends and family and stuff like that. It made it nice to kind of spread it out throughout the whole year. So we had all of these little micro adventures planned and that we could look forward to this year. The fifth reason that I'm going to talk about today is because it made some of the logistics a lot easier. I didn't have to worry about resupplying in town or figuring out where to do laundry, because I would bring food and clean clothes each weekend that we would go out. Next, I want to talk about the 5 things that I didn't necessarily like about section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. The first reason why section hiking isn't always the best option is because this would be really difficult to do by yourself. Like if you didn't have a support person like I did, I would not have been able to do this without the support of mostly my husband, sometimes my mom. It would have just been not impossible, but a lot more difficult, planning and whatnot. If you're wanting to do this, it's kind of essential that you either have a person who's willing to support you, or at least have a second person who's willing to hike it with you, so that you can bring 2 cars and do it that way a little bit easier. The next reason that I want to talk about why I didn't like section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail is that there are a lot of upfront logistics that have to be done in order to do this successfully. The state parks on the Oregon coast are extremely popular, and it is really difficult to get last-minute reservations for really any of the campsites, even the tent sites, especially like on busy holiday weekends. Like those are gonna book up months in advance. So I had to figure out what campground I wanted to camp at about 6 months in advance, and pretty much to the day log on and reserve my spots, especially if you want to sleep and stay the night in a yurt. There's not very many in each campground. Some of them don't even have them, and they are extremely popular. For people who are through hiking this trail, most of the state parks along the coast, they have hiker-biker sites, but these are only for people who don't have a vehicle. So if you're hiking like I did, but I had a car with me, I can't utilize those spots because they're only for people who are walking or biking through. But luckily, I like planning, and that wasn't too big of a deal for me. But if you're someone who really doesn't like to plan things that far in advance, this might not be the best option for you. The next reason why I didn't really like section hiking was because of how long the drives got. I live in the Portland area, and the northern sections were really convenient. They were about an hour and a half to 3 hours to get to each way, and this really isn't that bad. I go to those beaches all the time. But once we started getting into a lot of the southern sections, the drive got to be 4, 5, 6 hours each way, and that got a lot more difficult. That's when I would start taking like half the day off on Friday just to do the drive, just to get there, so I could have a full day of hiking on Saturday. So we made it work, but it is kind of the downside of section hiking. The next reason that I want to talk about why I didn't fully enjoy section hiking is because I didn't meet any other hikers the way I did it. I would do about 1 section a month, and I just didn't meet anybody. I think the prime time to through hike the Oregon Coast Trail is in the summer. And during those months, I think I saw a couple backpackers, but it's hard to tell if they were through hikers or not. I just didn't really get to interact with the hiking community or anything like that, which was kind of a bummer. And one reason why, if that's something that you're looking for when hiking this trail, you're probably not going to find that if you do it in sections like I did. The last reason that I want to talk about why I didn't like section hiking the Oregon Coast Trail is that it didn't scratch the through hiking itch for me. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this was to see if hiking long days, long hours, day after day, is something that I really enjoyed. I wanted to experience hiking in all different kinds of weather, whether it be rain, sun, wind, all that stuff, to see if through hiking was something that I actually wanted to do. And you'll have to stay tuned to see how that plays out. But I still have the itch to go through hiking, even though I was able to section hike this whole trail this year. I still have a want to do more and push more and see what I can really do. So as promised, I am going to talk about 2 tips that I have for people who are interested in either section hiking or through hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. The first tip is get the guidebook. There are a couple different options for maps that are on the internet. There's one that the Oregon State Parks puts out, and also one that the Oregon Coast Trail Foundation puts out for all the different sections. They're okay. They each have their pros and cons. You probably could look at both of them and figure out everything that you need, but just getting the guidebook was so helpful. There are a couple different options for guidebooks out there, but this is the one that I got, written by Bonnie Henderson, and it is just super descriptive, super informative. There are maps and different mileages and different possible itineraries and just descriptions of each sections and other information, and it really helped a lot when planning. And so I just would highly recommend getting a guidebook. There are a lot of places when you're hiking on the beach and you're supposed to get off the beach and get back onto a road, and those maps just don't really talk about the details about where to get off, where to look for the trail, things like that. And when you're actually hiking it, a lot of times the trail markers are hard to see if you don't know where to look. And sometimes they're not there at all. So I really highly recommend getting a guidebook and reading it and using it to help prepare for your hike. My second tip for hiking the Oregon Coast Trail is to always bring gloves and a raincoat. This might be a spoiler or a shocker, but it rains a lot in Oregon. Even in the summer, even on the coast. It could rain any day. So always have a raincoat, and I would suggest gloves as well, even if you're hiking in summer. When I was hiking one of the sections in July, I had about like a 6-mile stretch of beach, and it was completely socked in and cold and gloomy, and my hands were freezing, and I thought, it's July, I don't need to bring gloves, and it was a mistake. I think I was wearing this coat, and I had to just, tuck my fingers in and, just keep going until I got to the end of the beach. And then
20 minutes later.
From there, this was going into Florence. I had a road walk, and it was just perfectly clear after that, and I got really hot and took off most of my layers. So yeah, just always be prepared with layers, especially a waterproof layer, because you never know when it's going to rain in Oregon. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about the pros and cons of hiking the Oregon Coast Trail. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. I hope everyone has a mighty fine hike. Bye!